When my sister showed up after 10 years demanding her kids back, I thought that was crazy enough. But then she handed me a bill for $100,000 and said, "You owe me child support for babysitting my children." I literally laughed in her face, until I realized she was dead serious. Well, let's go. My name is Lily and I'm 35 years old. But this story starts when I was 25 and still believing my sister Vanessa had limits to how selfish she could be. Boy, was I wrong. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in March and I was dead asleep when frantic pounding on my door jolted me awake. Through the peephole, I saw 2 car seats on my doorstep with tiny bundled forms inside, and Vanessa's car speeding away, taillights disappearing into the darkness. My hands shook as I opened the door and found 6-month-old twins, Aaliyah and Malik, crying their hearts out. A crumpled note was taped to Aaliyah's car seat. "I can't handle this. They're your problem now. Don't try to find me." The babies were soaked, hungry, and had clearly been crying for hours. Malik had a fever, and Aaliyah's diaper was so full it had leaked through her clothes. As I brought them inside, the weight of what had just happened hit me like a freight train. Vanessa had abandoned her own children. Not with a relative for the weekend, not temporarily while she figured things out. She had literally dumped them on my doorstep like unwanted packages and disappeared into the night. The smell of spoiled formula and dirty diapers filled my apartment as I realized my life had just changed forever. I called her phone 17 times that night. It went straight to voicemail every single time. Standing in my living room at 3 a.m. holding 2 screaming babies I barely knew, I felt completely overwhelmed. I had no formula, no diapers, nothing. The twins hadn't seen me since they were newborns. I was essentially a stranger to them. Malik's fever worried me most. His little body was burning up and he kept making these weak whimpering sounds that broke my heart. I wrapped him in a cool washcloth while bouncing Aaliyah, who was screaming so hard she was turning purple. I threw on clothes and drove to the only 24-hour store in town, carrying both crying babies in their car seats. The cashier, an older black woman named Mrs. Robinson, took one look at me and said, "Honey, you look like you need help." Through tears, I explained what happened. She helped me pick out formula, diapers, baby medicine, and even gave me her daughter's old high chair from the storage room. "That woman should be ashamed," she said, shaking her head. "But these babies are blessed to have you." Back home, I spent the rest of the night walking the floor. Malik's fever broke around 5 a.m., and both babies finally fell asleep around 6. I sat on my couch, exhausted, looking at these 2 little humans who were now completely dependent on me. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't abandon them like their mother had. The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, doctor visits, and learning to care for twins on a teacher's salary. I called out sick for 3 days straight, using up precious leave time while I figured out childcare. My principal, Mrs. Washington, was understanding but concerned about my suddenly chaotic schedule. I tried calling Vanessa's friends, her ex-boyfriend Jeremiah, even our distant cousins. Nobody had heard from her. It was like she'd vanished into thin air, leaving me to piece together the twins' medical history from scattered paperwork in the diaper bag. Dr. Patterson at the pediatric clinic was blunt. "These babies show signs of neglect. Malik had an untreated ear infection and Aaliyah is underweight. How long has their mother been struggling?" I couldn't answer because I honestly didn't know. Vanessa had always been selfish, but I never thought she'd abandon her own children. Looking through their few belongings, I found empty formula containers, expired baby food, and clothes that were too small, evidence of a mother who'd checked out long before she physically left. The twins cried whenever I put them down, clinging to me with tiny fists. It broke my heart knowing they'd been left with someone who clearly resented caring for them. But slowly, day by day, they began to trust me. When Aaliyah smiled at me for the first time, I cried. These weren't just my sister's abandoned children anymore. They were becoming mine. 3 months later, with still no word from Vanessa, I made the hardest decision of my life. I called a lawyer. Attorney Michelle Davis was straightforward. "Given the abandonment and your sister's complete lack of contact, you have grounds for emergency guardianship. But if she contests it when she returns..." "If she returns," I corrected. "And when she does, she'll have to prove she's fit to parent children she dumped like garbage." The paperwork was extensive. I documented everything. The night she left them, the medical neglect, the complete absence of financial support. I kept detailed records of every doctor visit, every expense, every milestone. Judge Morrison granted temporary guardianship after reviewing the evidence. Ms. Johnson, he said, these children are fortunate to have you. Continue documenting everything. I started a journal that night, day 127 since Vanessa left. Malik said, Mama, today. My heart broke and soared at the same time. The adoption process began when they turned 1 and Vanessa still hadn't surfaced. My lawyer explained it would take time, but every day that passed strengthened my case. Friends asked if I was angry at Vanessa for destroying my single life. The truth was, watching Aaliyah take her first steps and hearing Malik giggle made me realize she hadn't destroyed my life. She'd given me the most precious gift imaginable, even if she'd never intended to. By the time the twins turned 2, we'd settled into a beautiful routine. I'd moved to a larger apartment with a yard where they could play. Aaliyah was fearless, climbing everything in sight, while Malik was gentle and thoughtful, already showing signs of being a natural peacemaker. I enrolled them in the best daycare I could afford, started college funds, and began planning for their future. Mrs. Thompson, their daycare teacher, often commented on how well-adjusted they were. You'd never know they experienced early trauma, she said. They're so secure and happy. But securing that happiness came at a cost. I worked extra hours tutoring students after school to pay for their expenses. Weekends meant trips to the park instead of dates, and my social life centered around playdates and children's birthday parties. I didn't mind. Watching them grow was worth every sacrifice. When Aaliyah had nightmares, she'd crawl into my bed whispering, Mommy, I'm scared. When Malik fell and scraped his knee, he ran to me crying, Mommy, fix it. They called me Mommy naturally without any prompting from me. To them, I wasn't Aunt Lily. I was simply the person who'd always been there, who sang them to sleep and kissed their boo-boos better. Meanwhile, Vanessa's social media showed a completely different story. She was living in Atlanta, posting photos from clubs, beach vacations, and expensive restaurants. Her Instagram bio read, Living my best life, #childfree, #blessed. It stung, but it also solidified my resolve to protect my children from someone who saw them as obstacles to her happiness. When the twins were 3, the final adoption papers were approved. I'll never forget that day in Judge Morrison's chambers. Aaliyah wore her favorite purple dress, and Malik had on his tiny suit that made him look like a little gentleman. Ms. Johnson, Judge Morrison said, you've provided excellent care for these children. Their biological mother has had 3 years to contest this adoption and has made no effort to contact them or provide support. I'm proud to finalize this adoption. The gavel came down, and just like that, they were legally mine. Aaliyah and Malik Johnson. Not temporary wards, not my sister's children I was babysitting, my children. We celebrated at Chuck E. Cheese, where they ran around screaming with joy while I sat watching them, overwhelmed with love and relief. That night, I updated their baby books. Today you became officially mine, but you've been my children since the moment I found you on my doorstep. I sent one text to Vanessa's old number. The twins are now legally mine. They're safe, loved, and thriving. You gave up your chance to be their mother. The message never delivered. Her number was disconnected. Life continued beautifully. Preschool graduations, soccer signups, swimming lessons. I was tired but fulfilled watching them grow into remarkable little humans. I thought our story had a happy ending. I was wrong. 7 years of peace ended on a random Thursday in October. I was making dinner while the twins, now 10, worked on homework at the kitchen table. Malik was helping Aaliyah with math problems when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I barely recognized. Vanessa stood there in expensive clothes, perfect makeup, and a confidence that radiated entitlement. My blood ran cold. Don't answer it, Mommy, Aaliyah said, appearing at my side. That lady looks mean. Out of the mouths of babes. But I had to face this eventually. I opened the door to find Vanessa flanked by a man in a suit carrying a briefcase. Hello, Lily, she said, pushing past me into my home. I'm here for my children. Malik and Aaliyah looked confused and frightened. They had no memory of this woman who'd waltzed into their safe space like she owned it. I'm Robert Sterling, Miss Patterson's attorney, the man said, handing me papers. We're here to discuss custody arrangements for Aaliyah and Malik Patterson. Their names are Johnson, I said firmly. They're my children. I adopted them 7 years ago after you abandoned them. Vanessa laughed, a cold sound that made my skin crawl. Abandoned? I left them with family while I got my life together. Now I'm ready to be their mother. The twins pressed closer to me and I wrapped my arms around them protectively. You left them on my doorstep at 2 a.m. with a note saying they were my problem now. That's not how I remember it. Sterling opened his briefcase with theatrical precision. My client is prepared to offer reasonable visitation while we transition the children back to their biological mother. Ms. Patterson has rebuilt her life and is now financially stable and ready to parent. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These children don't know you, I told Vanessa. You've been gone for 10 years. You never sent birthday cards, Christmas presents, or a single dollar for their care. I was young and overwhelmed, Vanessa said, examining her manicured nails. People mature, Lily. I'm not the same person I was at 22. Aaliyah tugged my shirt. Mommy, who is this lady? Why is she talking about us like we're not here? The question hung in the air like a slap. Vanessa looked at her daughter, this beautiful, intelligent child she'd thrown away, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt? Recognition? Then it was gone, replaced by cold determination. I'm your real mother, sweetie, Vanessa said, crouching down. Aunt Lily has been taking care of you, but I'm here now. This is my mommy, Malik said firmly, grabbing my hand. I don't know you. Sterling cleared his throat. Regardless of the emotional attachments formed, biological parents have rights. We're prepared to seek full custody if necessary. Full custody? I laughed bitterly. You think you can show up after a decade and take children you abandoned? I never abandoned anyone, Vanessa snapped. I made arrangements for their temporary care. You just never gave them back. The audacity was breathtaking. Sterling pulled out more documents. Additionally, my client believes she's entitled to compensation for the years you've had custody of her children without permission. We calculate 10 years of missed child support at approximately $100,000. I stared at them in disbelief. You want me to pay you child support for raising the children you abandoned? You benefited from having them, Vanessa said matter-of-factly. Tax deductions, government assistance, the joy of motherhood, all things that should have been mine. I deserve compensation for what you took from me. Aaliyah started crying. Malik looked back and forth between us, his young mind trying to process this insane conversation. I knelt down and pulled them both close. Go to your room and close the door, I whispered. Mommy needs to handle this. They ran upstairs and I heard their bedroom door slam. Good. They didn't need to hear what came next. You have some nerve, I said, standing slowly. You dumped 2 babies on my doorstep and disappeared for 10 years. I raised them, loved them, sacrificed for them. They call me mommy because I earned that title every single day you were gone. DNA doesn't lie, Sterling interjected. These are Ms. Patterson's biological children and she has rights. Rights she forfeited the night she abandoned them, I shot back. I have adoption papers. They're legally mine. Vanessa's mask slipped for a moment, revealing pure rage. You stole my children and turned them against me. You're going to pay for that, literally. Get out of my house. We'll be in touch, Sterling said, gathering his papers. Think carefully about what's best for everyone involved. As they left, Vanessa called over her shoulder, I'll see you in court, sister. The next morning, I called Michelle Davis, my attorney from the adoption. Her first question was direct. Do you have documentation of the abandonment and your subsequent care? Everything, I assured her. Bank statements, medical records, school documents, photos, 10 years of proof that I've been their only parent. Good. This sounds like a desperate money grab, but we need to be prepared for anything. I picked up the twins from school that day to find them unusually quiet. In the car, Aaliyah finally spoke. Mommy, is that lady really going to take us away? My heart clenched. No, baby. No one is taking you anywhere. You're my children and I'm going to fight for you. That night, I sat them down for the hardest conversation of their lives. I explained in age-appropriate terms that a woman who gave birth to them wanted to see them, but that it didn't change anything about our family. But why did she leave us? Malik asked, his 10-year-old logic trying to make sense of abandonment. Some people make bad choices, I said carefully. But you were never the problem. You were perfect babies who deserved love, and that's what you got. Over the next few weeks, I gathered evidence like my life depended on it. Because their lives did. Every receipt for soccer cleats, Every report card showing their excellent grades, every photo of birthday parties and Christmas mornings. Michelle was impressed by my documentation. This is the most thorough case file I've ever seen. You've been preparing for this battle without knowing it. Meanwhile, Vanessa hired a high-profile attorney and launched a social media campaign portraying herself as a reformed mother fighting to reclaim her children from an overprotective sister. The war was on. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in December. I dressed the twins in their best clothes, but they wouldn't be testifying. Judge Morrison, the same judge who'd finalized their adoption, had ruled them too young for formal testimony. Vanessa arrived looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover, playing the role of the reformed, successful mother. Her new attorney, David Blackwood, was known for winning impossible cases. Your Honor, Blackwood began, my client was a young, overwhelmed mother who made the difficult decision to place her children in temporary care with family. She's now successful, stable, and ready to resume her parental responsibilities. I watched this performance with growing fury. Temporary care? She'd literally run away in the middle of the night. Michelle stood to present our case. Your Honor, the defendant didn't place these children in temporary care. She abandoned them. Ms. Johnson has documentation proving 10 years of sole financial, emotional, and physical responsibility for these children. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements showing I'd spent over $200,000 on their care while Vanessa contributed nothing. Medical records with my name as emergency contact since they were 6 months old. School forms listing me as their mother. Then came the moment that changed everything. Your Honor, I stood up, unable to contain myself any longer. She didn't leave them in temporary care. She dumped them on my doorstep at 2 a.m. with a note saying, I can't handle this, they're your problem now, and disappeared for a decade. These children don't even remember her. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Ms. Patterson, do you have any evidence of maintaining contact with these children over the past 10 years? Vanessa's confident facade cracked. I was getting my life together. I knew they were safe. That's not what I asked. The silence stretched as Vanessa realized she had no evidence of contact, support, or interest in her children for an entire decade. Judge Morrison reviewed the adoption papers, bank statements, and medical records with careful attention. Ms. Patterson, he said finally, these documents show that you legally relinquished parental rights through abandonment, and Ms. Johnson completed a legal adoption 7 years ago. What grounds do you have for challenging that adoption? Blackwood scrambled. Your Honor, my client was young and made mistakes, but biological bonds were severed by abandonment, Judge Morrison interrupted. Ms. Johnson, please approach the bench. I stood on shaking legs as he addressed me. You've provided exemplary care for these children. Your documentation is thorough and your commitment is evident. However, I want to address the counterclaim for financial compensation. My heart stopped. Was he actually considering Vanessa's ridiculous demand? Ms. Patterson, he turned to Vanessa, you're claiming Ms. Johnson owes you child support for caring for children you abandoned? She benefited from having them, Vanessa said weakly. Judge Morrison's expression grew stern. Ms. Johnson didn't benefit, she sacrificed. She gave up her 20s to raise children you discarded. She deserves compensation for a decade of sole financial responsibility. The courtroom was dead silent. I'm not only denying your petition for custody, he continued, I'm ordering you to pay Ms. Johnson $85,000 in back child support, roughly $8,500 per year for 10 years of sole care. Vanessa's face went white. Your Honor, I don't have that kind of money. You should have thought of that before abandoning your responsibilities and then demanding money from the woman who cleaned up your mess. The gavel came down with finality. Vanessa had no rights to my children and owed me $85,000 in back support. As we left the courthouse, she grabbed my arm desperately. Lily, please, she begged. I'm broke. I spent everything on legal fees. Can't we work something out? I looked at this woman who'd tried to destroy our family for money and felt nothing but pity. You made your choices, Vanessa. Live with them. Outside, Aaliyah and Malik waited with Michelle's assistant. When they saw me coming, they ran into my arms and I held them tight, breathing in the familiar scent of their hair. Is it over, Mommy? Malik asked. It's over, baby. We're safe. That night, I tucked them into bed like I had every night for 10 years. Aaliyah asked one last question. "Mommy, why did that lady think she could just take us?" "Some people think they can undo their mistakes by hurting others," I explained. "But family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, and who loves you no matter what." As I write this, Vanessa continues harassing me on social media with fake accounts, demanding I give her back her children, and calling me a kidnapper. I block every account and focus on what matters: raising two incredible kids who know they're loved unconditionally. Yesterday, Aaliyah made honor roll and Malik scored the winning goal in his soccer game. They came home chattering excitedly about their day, secure in the knowledge that their mommy would always be there to listen. Vanessa gave birth to them, but I became their mother the night she left them crying on my doorstep. That's a bond no court can break and no amount of money can buy. Justice wasn't just served in that courtroom, it was 10 years in the making. I keep going over this in my head wondering if I was too harsh. What do you think? Was I justified or did I go too far?